Hello everyone, and this is my review for WWE Extreme Rules 2013. We're going to go ahead and try to do this match by match, starting out with Chris Jericho and Fandango. Honestly, I felt like this was an okay match in general. It was a little sloppy right at the beginning, and they picked it up, and you got a little bit better fluidity between both of them in the middle and towards the end, with a really good finish with Chris Jericho using the code breaker while Fandango was jumping off the top rope. I felt that was a good way of finishing the match, and maybe they'll potentially continue the feud. They've been doing some good stuff with Fandango. I'm still not really buying into the character at all, but hopefully they can continue something good with them, and we'll see where they go with it, and if they continue on with the feud. Next is the United States Championship match with Kofi Kingston and Dean Ambrose. I like the aspect that they didn't have the other Shield members at ringside and kind of left it to just Kofi and Dean, to the aspect of both of them being able to show what they can do in the ring in a one-on-one setting, and I felt they both did a really good job here. Definitely like the aspect of Dean Ambrose getting the United States title in here, and I definitely felt like this show was going to be one of those aspects of them doing that slow build and getting the Shield, all three members of the Shield, a title by the end of the show. And this was definitely one good way of starting it, having Dean Ambrose win the United States title. And we'll see what kind of feuds he can have as a singles competitor, and what they'll actually do with the Shield as a team as a whole going into the future as well. Next is the strap match with Sheamus and Mark Henry. Honestly, strap matches have always been hits or misses in the past. And in general, you'll usually get more misses than hits. I felt that this one was a fairly good hit for a match, a pretty good strap match in general. The chemistry between Mark Henry and Sheamus has always been really good, and I definitely ended up liking where they went with the match in general. Mark Henry attempting to hog tie Sheamus and drag him across the ring, and of course Sheamus just trying to knock out Mark Henry to get be able to just walk to each of the corners, and even try a few tricks to try to get to all four corners in general. So I definitely like the way they worked the match. Strap matches are generally a little bit more slower paced and give a different aspect and look than than what most fans are typically used to. And I actually do like these strap matches. I don't want to see them too terribly often, but when they happen, it's kind of a different feel, and it's nice to see them every now and again. Next is the I Quit match with Jack Swagger and Alberto Del Rio. Honestly, I felt that this was, at this point in time, probably the best match on the show. I thought they did a really good job here in the I Quit match. I like the aspect towards the end where Zeb Coulter chased away Ricardo Rodriguez and then attempted to use the towel for him to making the referee think that Ricardo Rodriguez had thrown the towel in for him at that point. And that was one nice little touch that I liked there. I found it weird of them using instant replay in any way, shape, or form. I guess it just seems weird that they would actually do something like that. They wouldn't just have gone off of a referee's word or off of Ricardo Rodriguez's word to restart the match. And then, of course, that led into the finish of the match with Jack Swagger quitting to the cross arm breaker. I liked how they worked it in there. It wasn't just like a real quick he quit after it got applied. He actually tried countering and getting out of it, and then got put back in the hold, didn't quit. So I like where they went with that match. Next is the tag team title match with the Shield, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Team Hell No. Again, they really put on a good match here, in my mind. I've always liked the tornado matches. It kind of just throws a nice little area of chaos in there, and it usually comes off really well. So the tag team tornado matches have always been fun for me to watch, and this was no difference here. Definitely just liked how at times, like, Team Hell No had isolated the other member, one of the members of the Shield, while the other one was knocked out of the ring. Same for Shield versus with Daniel Bryan and Kane. They just really well paced the match in general, and it came off really well. I liked I like that they didn't use the typical, spear, Roman Reigns spearing one of the members to finish the match like they had been doing in the past. I like that they just came up with like a different type of move with for them to finish off with than having having Daniel Bryan on Roman Reigns' shoulders and then Seth Rollins dropping the knee on him. I thought that was at least a decent finisher for a tag team maneuver, and it came off a little awkward initially. Maybe it will be, maybe it'll, seeing it a few more times, maybe will actually make it seem more, have a little bit more fluidity, a little bit looking better or something in that aspect. But it was definitely a good way of finishing it, and definitely like the scene after the match with all three members of the Shield having their titles there. That was definitely a good way of finishing that off. Next is the Extreme Rules match with Randy Orton and Big Show, and honestly, for a match, it wasn't really a bad match in general. I felt they could have probably used the weapons a little bit more throughout the match. It's not like they didn't use them at all, but in general, it really didn't feel like they were using weapons all that much. And usually Extreme Rules matches are kind of, more or less just weapons matches in general, where you see a bunch of different types of weapons. You pretty much only saw steel chairs, kendo sticks, and a ladder. Nothing really much more there. I did like the ending where Randy Orton brought back the punt. That was a good way of going, but just in general, as an Extreme Rules match, it really wasn't all that good because of the lack of variety of weapons that were used. But as a match in general, it was a pretty good match. Next is the Last Man Standing match, Ryback John Cena. Honestly, I would go off and say this was probably the best match on the show in my mind, just for the aspect of they probably ended it the best way to continue the feud without making either of them really the loser. Their spots throughout the entire match in general were really well done, well timed, and well paced out. I liked just the aspect that both men were going. They were going in the aspect of going to the 9 count before getting up. They did a Last Man Standing match really well, and of course the final spot with them with Ryback driving Cena through the staging was just an amazing. It was an amazing spot in general. They did a really good job with that, and then it sucks that they didn't decide to have some kind of winner to it, but oh well. They're obviously going to be trying to continue the feud, and that was probably their best way of ending it without having a winner or loser, making either of them really look weak. So, in general, I felt it was probably the best match on the show. I'm sure other people will have different opinions of that, but that's my own personal one on that. Now that leads to the final match of the night, which was Brock Lesnar and Triple H inside the steel cage match. And honestly, I felt that they did a really good job with this steel cage match. They used the cage a lot, which is been very weird of steel cage matches recently. A lot of those times you don't even see the cage really get used a lot. But both of these guys were, they were throwing each other into it left and right. They did a good job of using the cage. I like the aspect of Triple H camouflaging the sledgehammer at the top of the cage to make it look like it was part of it in some way, shape, or form. That was a good way of getting the sledgehammer in there. Definitely liked one aspect that I really did like about the match was Brock Lesnar selling the knee injury throughout the entire match as soon as the knee injury happened inside of the steel cage there. He did a great job of selling it in general, always hobbling on it. Even when he was performing the F5, he was doing that on one leg. He was pretty much doing it on one leg, and I felt that was a real good dichotomy and a real good spot for that for the match in general, to have him selling that knee injury throughout the rest of the match. It just made him come off as a bigger beast when he ended up winning the match. And I felt they did a really good job there on that. So the cage match in general, I felt was really good as well. So overall, I felt the show at least build-wise going into the show, there were a couple really good builds. I liked how they built Cena and Ryback, and they built the Shield going into the pay-per-view. But honestly, build-wise going into there for most of the feuds, it wasn't really all that well done going in there. Matches on the show, for the most part, were really good and very fun to watch in my own personal opinion. So overall, I would probably give it an okay rating, mainly because the builds for most of the matches weren't really there, and some of it was just kind of thrown together last minute, like the I Quit match. Even though you had the feud with Alberto Del Rio and Jack Swagger already there, that match in general was kind of thrown together last minute. It still came off as a really good match, but you didn't really have much time of building that matchup. Same with Triple H and Brock Lesnar. They didn't have a lot of time building up that match in the Raws leading up to the actual pay-per-view. But again, came off as a really good match as well. So, like I said, overall, because of the lack of build going into the show, I will probably degrade the show a little bit to an okay rating. Matches were really good, but yeah, that's my review for WWE Extreme Rules, and I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.